Have you lost the connection with your higher self? Are you noticing the dis-ease of the outside world? It's time to reconnect with nature and each other and raise our consciousness, vibration, and frequency. Together we can create a world of peace and abundance. It's Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spiritual Revolution Radio. Today, my guest is Ariane Thomas. She is an international healer. She's a teacher, a ceremonialist, a speaker, and she deals in a Akashic record readings as well. But her main focus really is dealing with our ancestry and helping us kind of let go of some of that ancestral baggage we were carrying from life to life. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today, amongst other things. But welcome to the show, Ariane. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks, Will, for inviting me to be here today.
Glad to have you for sure. And tell us just a little bit, kind of your history. I know you have a Juris Doctorate, you have a college degree. So how did you end up where you're at now?
Well, as everyone else has an interesting story, so is mine. I grew up in a family of 8 children. And so it was pretty chaotic. And so when I was growing up, I was doing everything that people told me to do. It's like, go to school, get an education, find a job where you make money, where you get respect, and follow the American dream, right?
Yeah.
And so I went to school initially to become a teacher and hated it. And then somebody said to me, well, they're letting girls into law school these days. And I went, well, that sounds like a good idea. So I did that, went to law school, got into law, and spent 20 years being a trial attorney. And actually wasn't very happy with that because I don't like dealing with conflict. And talk about a conflict-oriented job.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. But it was what everybody told me I should be doing. And frankly, I was really good at it. But what happened is that one day I went into work and I started feeling tired. And it's like, oh, I must be coming down with the flu. So I told my boss, hey, I think I'm getting sick. And this was on a Friday. I'm going to go home and, I'll be back on Monday. Well, 2 weeks later, I ended up in the hospital dying. And they ran all kinds of tests, brought in all kinds of experts, and they sent me home 2 days later and said, there's nothing we can do for you. Would you rather stay here and die, or would you rather go home? And I went, send me home. I'm not going to stay here. And so I went home, basically expecting that I wasn't going to get better. And a good friend of mine brought a shaman over. And she pulled me back from the brink of death. Now, it turns out that my father was 3/4 Cherokee. But I had been into meditation and energy work, but I hadn't really connected with my Native American roots before then. And once I connected with that shaman, it's like, wait a minute, this is what I need to do. And it actually took me over 10 years to heal because I truly was at death's door. But I pursued self-healing and my Native American roots from that time. And what happened is I connected with spirit and said, what's going on here and what can I do to help myself and help others? And that's when I was guided to connect with my ancestors.
And I hopefully I'm not interrupting, but
No, I wanted to give you time for questions.
that guiding to your ancestors, kind of walk us through that path. How did that happen and come about, really?
Sure. Well, I went into a deep meditation because I was lost, and it was one of those times where I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. It's like nothing else was working. And I reached out to Spirit and said, guide me, help me. What do I do from here? And Spirit took me on into a very deep meditation on a journey through time and space to go back into the past and connect me with an ancestor. And what I found from that ancestor was that there was a situation in that ancestor's life that had created a pattern of illness and brokenness in that ancestor's life. And that pattern got sent down through the family, throughout the generations, and that was what was interfering in my life and health and in the lives and healths of all of my family members. And not only that, but then I asked, okay, what can we do to change this pattern? And the ancestor said, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this was affecting others. And so that ancestor in the past actually changed her life and took a different path in her life to change the energy in the past. And that had a domino effect on the genetic pattern throughout the ages that I could bring forward into the present to shift my life, my health, and my actual genetic code.
So, I mean, you primarily work, obviously, in the field of dealing with people's, and you've been doing this a long time. I mean, you have a couple of best-selling books on Amazon that you've written about this subject. So this is not new to you. I just want everybody out there to know that you have been doing this for quite a while. But you're dealing with kind of these generational family patterns that are happening, right?
Absolutely.
So, what I am hearing, I guess I'm struggling here a little bit to think about how to put this, but is that something that happened from someone in my previous generation is also affecting me, or is it more a previous life that I've lived that's affecting me?
It actually can be either of those. Because we find that sometimes we are our ancestors, right?
Right. Okay, that makes sense to me anyway.
Right. Sure. We live a lifetime, and we have children who have children, and then we reincarnate again. But sometimes we actually have ancestors that are not that are different from us in our family history. But we can also connect with those ancestors through our genes. And it is our actual pattern of genes in our bodies that are the highway and the link to those patterns that we may want to change. Because not all of our family patterns are bad. I mean, we've inherited some wonderful patterns from our family.
Right.
You know, honesty, hard work, connections, love, those kinds of things are beliefs that we've inherited from our families that we would like to keep. But in the 20 years that I've been doing this, I find that there are beliefs that we have inherited from our family around poverty, around poor relationships, that have to do with ill health, you know, all of those things that we were taught in past generations, in past decades, that said, oh, that's a genetic disease. You're going to inherit that. And when you get older, you're going to get diabetes. You're going to get cancer. You're going to get, you know, one of these inherited diseases because your mother had it, your father had it, you know, the other people in your family had it. That's not true. because we can change those genes. We can change those patterns.
And I think that's important as we go, through this 30 minutes together, that we help people understand that, because I'm adopted. Mm-hmm. And I was always asked, you're always asked the medical questions. I went in the military, I was asked all those family history questions,
Right.
Which none of them mattered to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was adopted. So
right.
It doesn't matter that my father may have had cancer or whatever. It doesn't affect me in their minds. But tell us a little bit about how you changed that, and why. I always tell people, I don't have to worry about my future, and I really, it kind of bothers me in some ways that they use genetics so much to say, especially about disease, because if I tell my child, gosh, you're going to get cancer because I had cancer, you're going to get this problem because I had this problem, all that does is then start to develop their mind to have that problem, right?
Absolutely. Because it sets up a belief system that you make come true. And that's part of the problem. So let me tell you how this works on a spiritual level, and then I'll tell you how it works on a scientific level. Okay?
I like it.
So on a spiritual level, what Spirit guided me to was a shamanic journey where I take my clients through time and space on a journey into the past to meet the original ancestor that started the family pattern, that created the issue that is interfering in their life today. The issue of poverty, the issue of cancer, the issue of broken relationships. And we go back to that original ancestor and we see what the situation is, because our ancestors didn't create problems in their lives just because. People don't get up in the morning and say, I think I'm going to beat my kids today. We just don't do that.
We hope not.
Right. No, I don't think most people do that. It's situational. Right. And we find a lot of our ancestors, lived in villages that were invaded by conquerors, that were overtaken, and all of their property was taken away, and they became slaves. And that's where illness started. That's where poverty started. That's where despair and depression began. And so we see what the situation is, and then we give that ancestor an opportunity to change that situation, to actually change a decision that they made in their life, to select a different probability stream in their life, to change the time and space of their life and choose to live a happier life, a more beneficial life. And we take the energy from that more positive life and bring that into the present. And we set that into this time and place, into the client's life. And what I then do is I give the client exercises to establish that new energy field into their energy field in the present. Now, why this works is based upon epigenetics. And Will, I know you've had experts on epigenetics on your show, so I'm not going to go into methylation and telomeres and all of that. But what I will tell you is that what epigenetics shows us is that each one of us has the ability to turn off negative genes and to turn on positive genes. And there are specific research studies that give you exercises and that tell you what works to turn on your positive genes. Things like meditation, yoga and exercise, affirmations, and to do brain exercises that will change your neocortex to have a more positive outlook.
Right.
And these are the things that I direct my clients to do so that their positive genes remain turned on. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because people used to, when I used to tell people I do ancestral lineage clearing, because I've been doing this for 20 years, they'd go, oh, yeah, you're one of those woo-woo people. Yeah, that stuff doesn't work. And when epigenetics started coming out and the science started coming out, I point to epigenetics and say, this is why what I do works, because we're actually changing a person's belief system. We're changing what they think the world is about, and we're changing how their brain actually incorporates the energy of this past that their ancestor recreated.
Mm-hmm. So
does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And I mean, I'm big, and you know already probably because you've studied me a little bit, but I'm big into epigenetics and I'm big into quantum physics. So both of those things come into play when you're talking about changing these patterns, right? That are genetically, they're genetic patterns, they're ancestral patterns, which is what you deal with. The science finally is coming, right, to catch up with the spiritual side that's been around for a long, long time. So,
absolutely,
for sure. So, I really want people to understand kind of how these things are inherited, if you will. Being adopted and having 4 other siblings in my household who were also adopted. Well, one wasn't. 3 other siblings in my household that were adopted, and we all but we all inherited stuff from our current family too. The people that raised us, my father and mother who raised me, I inherited things from them. Like my father he's this calming influence, and I kind of inherited his calming influence, and we pick things up from people we live with and are around and are conditioned by as well, right? So.
Certainly, because there's always 2 factors involved. One is your environment, and the other is your genetics.
Right.
And ancestral lineage clearing takes into account both, because it looks at your belief system about how the world works and its impact on your life today. And let me address specifically adopted people, all right? Because I have a lot of clients who've been adopted. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've found from doing ancestral lineage clearing work is that oftentimes when you have been given up for adoption, you will find that when we go back into the past, perhaps your parents were adopted. The ancestor was lost from their family, separated from their family, was one child too many, and was fostered out, so that there is a pattern of lost, abandoned, and neglected children that go down through the ages. And so that pattern keeps repeating until we break it. And then the view of the world that comes from your foster parent is oftentimes one of what you need in terms of support in this lifetime. It's like you may have inherited the strong genetics that you needed for your body, mind, and spirit from your biological parents. But your foster parents were given to you in order to support the life that you were destined to live. And so you have 2 genetic lines to be concerned about. And sometimes your foster parents gave you some difficult patterns that you may need to clear, such as your foster parents may have had attitudes of poverty or victimhood that you may need to clear in your life, because the belief is that the universe is a difficult place. Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work hard in this life. It's tough out there.
The common
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
that's a very common belief.
Yeah.
And you may not have inherited from your biological parents, but that may have been something that you learned in your environment that we can also clear. Because you have ancestors from those foster parents, because they may be part of your soul family that came with you into this lifetime to make sure you were taken care of.
Sure, and I really believe that, because I've always felt like this presence to my left, if you will, right here, that's always here, since I was little, that I really think comes from my birth parents. I don't know that it's a mother or father, it's always felt more like grandmother or something, there, that's always wondered or worried or watched over me, but I know who my mother and father, really mom and dad that raised me, are, and the path they brought me along. And you're right. I did pick up, I'm so grateful to have the parents I had, because I think they gave me opportunities that I probably wouldn't have had left in another situation. At the time I was adopted, adoption happened when someone was getting a baby probably out of wedlock, and it was being hidden and those kinds of things, right? So,
Sure.
So it's interesting to me as you talk about healing these past. Boy, we're running out of time so fast. Oh dear, I just looked up at the clock. That as we go through this process, that you can bring about a healing both from both sets of families, really, because I believe in soul groups, and that's such a great way to say it. I've never heard it said that way. That's awesome. So.
Yeah. And I find that clients are very clear about the patterns they're seeking to heal. For relationships, I'll just do a quick story. I had a woman come to me, and she was the third generation woman who had never had a long-term partner or father figure in the family. Every father in 3 generations had either abandoned the family, had died, had left, was an alcoholic or an addict, and never stayed long enough to raise their children.
Wow.
And she came to me and said, I don't want this for my life. I don't want this for my children. Can we clear this pattern? And we went back 400 years to that original woman whose husband died, and she was partnered with his brother because of the culture, and she hated it. And it was a terrible marriage, and he ran off. And so here was this death abandonment issue that needed to be cleared for the whole family, for all of the women in the family, so that she could actually create a loving bond with a partner who would stay.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So tell everyone how can we reach you? How can they get help from you? Where do we find you?
Oh, I have a website called ancestrallineageclearing.com, and you can reach me there. And my books are located on my website. I have private sessions available. I also have certain programs that are available. I have meditations where you can talk to your ancestors. I also do group sessions that are available on my website about clearing specific issues. So I have all kinds of programs that are available. So come visit me.
Okay, one more time, the website is?
ancestrallineageclearing.com.
All right. Ariane, thank you so much for being on the show today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Will.
Thanks. Everyone, you can find me at lifebydesign.institute, and you can go there, join my free private Facebook page if you want to, and definitely look up Ariane's stuff. I'm going to. I've already studied her quite a bit and been on her site. It's been a pure pleasure, and thank you, everyone. Love and peace, and have a great day.
This has been Spiritual Revolution Radio with Dr. Will Miller. For more information or to be a guest, please visit lifebydesign.institute. Join us next week for another edition of Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller. This has been a production from a podcast studio.